Okay guys, the story I want to talk about today has all the ingredients of a classic esports scandal. It's been going on for months. There are thousands of words of Twitlongers being exchanged between both parties. There are allegations of contractual breaches, accusations of unpaid money, and even slander. There's just one teensy little difference between this don't at me and one we typically do. And that's that this esports scandal is over $68.33 USD. All right, so about a week ago, I got a tip in my DMs about an Australian Rainbow Six Siege player who might be owed some money by his former org. Okay, so I'm on the case. When I see stuff like this, I usually investigate. Sometimes it turns out to be a pretty big deal, like the other week when I reported on the low-key esports scandal, which is an org that owes globally its players and staff over $137,000. This one was not one of those times. This disagreement was over a grand total of 100 Australian dollars.
Bruh.
But I didn't drop it. For some reason, I decided to dig further into it. I don't know, I'm just sickly fascinated by the idea of a very public esports dispute over what equates to $68.33 USD. Now, stay with me here. If you're looking for some big expose on some of the shady shit that still goes on in esports, we still do that. But I wanted to take you on this journey with me because as much as the $68 thing is ridiculous from the outset, this is actually a pretty interesting story. I talked to both the player and the org involved, and for this story, I gotta take you to the mysterious world of Australian Rainbow Six Siege.
It's quiet here.
It all started in December of 2019 when a guy called Todd Francis, that's this guy, dropped an esports classic, a Twitlonger announcing the circumstances of his departure from an org called Oddity Esports. For a little background, Oddity Esports was founded in 2018, and since then they've been in and out of Paladins, Rainbow Six Siege, Mortal Kombat, and apparently Krunker. Now, the R6 team we're talking about here competed in Pro League down there, and they actually came in third in the Asia Pacific, Australia, and New Zealand region in Season 10. Now, that particular win netted the team a cool $2,500, which you will note is about 36 times more money than what this entire dispute is about. Anyways, apparently some drama on the team goes down, they all decide to kick a dude named Vinny, and Todd is having none of it. Todd's like, I don't like the way you handled this, I'm out. Now at this point, the roster lock for that region has either already happened or it's about to, so Todd willingly rides out the next little while without an active roster to participate in. Todd and Oddity start to negotiate the terms for mutual termination of his contract. In the midst of this, Todd sends Oddity an invoice for 100 Australian dollars. See, under the terms of his contract, Todd is entitled to get reimbursed for $50 per week for food and expenses incurred at LAN events while participating as a member of the team. Fine, so he claims 2 weeks for 2 events, the Melbourne Esports Open and Ubisoft XP. Now here's where things start to go sideways. Oddity hits him back after he sends that invoice and just says no. They say 2 problems, Todd. Number 1, you only have receipts for 1 event, so that's $50, not 100. Number 2, you're in breach of your contract because you didn't tweet 3 times about our sponsors like we told you to. Yes, part of this dispute involves Todd's refusal to tweet 3 times in 1 month about Oddity sponsors. According to a 2,500-word statement released by Oddity on the matter, Todd agreed to do the 3 tweets to fulfill his contractual obligations and then backed out. It's at this point that I would like to read you my personal favorite paragraph from this very, very long statement. Todd, quote, believed if we were to hold the player in question to the 3 social posts as discussed, that the organization would be, quote, fucking me over. The player then informed us that should we want to fuck anyone over, we should, quote, fuck over the people who caused this situation. Obviously, we had and have no intention of fucking anyone over, and we're looking to provide the best outcomes for players, the teams as a whole, and the organization. End quote. That actually made me laugh out loud the first time I read it. Not because I doubt the truthfulness of that statement, just the way they wrote it. Now, I asked Todd, why didn't you do those 3 tweets? And he basically told me that he didn't think he was gonna get the $100 whether he did or didn't do the 3 tweets, so he just didn't. For what exactly he had to tweet about? Well, it would be either beef jerky, peripherals, or gaming chairs. Honestly, all great things. Why can't we be sponsored by beef jerky? Okay, forget about the tweets for a second though. What about those missing receipts from the second event that would net him that second 50 Australian dollars? Well, Todd says that yeah, he doesn't have the receipt, but he has bank statements that prove he bought the food. Aha! Now, it's worth noting here that I have seen the contract, I've read the part about reimbursement, and technically it does say that repayment is due when the org gets the requisite receipts, not necessarily a bank statement. During this whole thing, there were 3 Twitlongers dropped between Todd and Oddity, and honestly, some pretty questionable tweets by both parties, if I'm being totally honest. But wait, there's more! See, Todd had dinner at one of those events with a co-owner of Oddity. The co-owner paid the whole bill for the dinner, and later asked Todd to pay his share, which he did. Now, Todd says he wants that money back, because if he has to provide a receipt to Oddity, then Oddity has to provide a receipt to him. Look, Todd's claim is not backed up by any contract, but you do have to wonder if you're an esports org owner, even if your org is really small and you take a player out for dinner and you pay for it, are you really gonna ask for that money back? I mean, like, what if my boss, the CEO of theScore, was like, yo, Colin, I'm gonna take you to Red Lobster, don't even worry about it, you can PayPal me afterwards. It's kind of a weird move.
He taking hoes to Red Lobsters and movies. Where my Red Lobsters? Where's my cheddar cheese biscuit?
Okay, so where does this all leave us? Well, Todd quit Oddity Esports. Then he invoiced them for $100. Oddity is like, no dice, bud. You don't have the right receipts, plus you didn't fulfill your contractual obligations. Go tweet about beef jerky. But there is a compromise here. One of the co-owners of Oddity told me that because Todd does have the correct receipts for one of the events, they will pay him 50 Australian dollars, that's 34 bucks US, for that event if he amends his invoice to be 50 bucks, not 100. Now, in all seriousness, we might be having a little bit of fun at the expense of this situation, which involves basically inconsequential money. But it is a really fascinating case study in what happens in small orgs, in small scenes, when the relationship between a player and the team totally breaks down. This time, it's over 68 bucks US. Another time, in another situation, it could be over a lot more. Now, when it comes to this particular case, I can sympathize with both sides. Todd really believes he is owed that 100 Australian dollars, and he has some kind of proof towards it. I can respect that. Oddity Esports, for their part, truly believe he is owed at maximum half of that, because he was only able to prove half of what he's claiming, and he failed to live up to his supposed contractual obligations with their sponsors. And I can respect that. From what both parties have told me, I don't actually think anyone's gonna pursue legal action here. And I don't know if Todd is gonna take the 50 bucks compromise. But whatever happens with this, you gotta think. In a small insular scene like Rainbow Six Siege Australian esports, this very public spat has to be damaging for both parties. Guys, one final note after the video proper has ended. I do get a lot of my stories these days from helpful tips. That low-key thing was a tip and it turned out to be huge. This funny little story was a tip and it turned out to be fascinating. If you've got something that you'd like the Don't At Me team to investigate, that's not just me, that's Devin, that's Keith, that's Dan Rosen, well, you can hit us up at tips@thescore.com. How about that? Also, my DMs are always open.